Whoa, man. Where the hell am I? Yeah! Where the hell's my probation officer? A lot closer than you think, and we got a proposition for you. Will it get me out of these damn cuffs? Most likely not. If anything, you're probably gonna get the death penalty for what you've done. I see. But what do you want out of me? Here's the paperwork. And if I don't sign it, you'll find that our acquaintances just off camera over here aren't as friendly as I am. And if anything, we got ways of making you talk. And it's just a matter of time. Alrighty. So you'll make me talk? All we want is the truth and your opinion. Opinion on what? This right here. So you want me to review this, as per stated in the document right in front of you, and that's all you want. We have other things that we want, but that'll come later. Well, if that's all, then we'll start on my thoughts on Persona 5. Now, in case you didn't know, or you were living under a rock, there's a long line of Japanese role-playing games called Shin Megami Tensei with a wide variety of sequels and spin-offs, the most prominent of which is Persona. The Persona game started off as Revelations Persona, aka a game that almost nobody played back in 1996, until Persona 3 came on the scene and largely popularized the franchise. A common observation you'll find with this franchise is that starting with Persona 3, each game got increasingly more popular, with the most popular and recent being the subject of today's video. In Persona 5, you play the role of this guy, or him, since they haven't done the Western approach of just calling you by your last name yet. Your story begins when you try to defend a girl from being molested by some dude, like a true feminist ally, until he sues your ass and you wind up in Tokyo. At this point, you get tried, have a criminal record on you, and get expelled from your previous school. Since no other school other than Shujin Academy in Tokyo will take you in, you have no choice but to sleep in the attic of a cafe called LeBlanc, owned by resident hat wearer Sojiro Sakura. From there, you immediately get in trouble by ending up late on your first day of returning to high school with your soon-to-be best pals Ryuji Sakamoto and An Takamaki, who get sucked into this sort of alternate reality where under dire situations, the cast rip off their so-called mask that protect their innermost vulnerabilities, and in doing so awakens their persona. Now, this might be a kind of bit difficult thing to explain, but a persona is basically the truest manifestation of your heart. These guys you can use to use skills, which are kind of like spells to shoot fire or lightning, or use buffing and debuffing spells. From there on, you will meet the cat creature thing whatever, Morgana, and the fourth form, the Phantom Thieves, who go out to steal people's hearts in the alternate cognitive world known as the Metaverse, to force them to have a change of heart and not be, an awful person. The manner in how they change hearts is to infiltrate so-called palaces, which in a sense are a world where the distorted desires of the individual have materialized into what they believe the world is. Each of these palaces in the end represents the 7 deadly sins. To start, the first palace that is infiltrated is the castle of Suguru Kamoshida, who believes that the entire Shujin Academy is a castle where his desires run rampant. From there on, you'll go through a slew of palaces and meet a wide variety of characters in your journey towards rehabilitation. Now at this point, we kinda come to a crossroads on what to talk about, because we have two kind of big portions of the game. The dungeon crawler / RPG part of the game, and the life simulation high school stuff. First, we'll talk about the combat and dungeon crawling aspect of Persona 5, since depending on what difficulty you choose, it'll most likely be about half the game for you. But the combat remains pretty close to its predecessors in the Shin Megami Tensei games, but with a few alterations and upgrades here or there. Essentially, the combat takes place in palaces and it pits you against shadows, which is basically the truest version of yourself that is suppressed, a side of one's personalities that they don't want to see. Shadows can range from lesser ones that act as your typical goons that you'll find throughout the game, to some stronger mid-bossy shadows that pose a more dire threat to your typical engagement, and finally there are the head shadows, or basically the shadow version of the person whose castle you're infiltrating. These guys are your goal, and it's the key to stealing the most precious of treasures, which we'll get to soon. In combat against these shadows, you can attack them with physical weapons for a small sliver of health, while firearms tend to do more damage but have limited ammunition. And while the ammunition is limited, it can also be replenished by leaving the metaverse entirely, so if you want to replenish your ammo, you gotta leave a palace. Now this is one of the tiniest of gripes, but you can only really use or replenish your ammo when you infiltrate a palace once. So basically when you enter a palace, you have your ammo and that's it. If you want to replenish, you gotta leave, go to the next day, and then you get your ammo back. But it isn't too much of an issue, since with the use of skills, I find that barely I needed to use my guns, except for very specific instances. Skills in the Persona games are basically like magic spells that your personas can use that range from elemental damage to psyche, nuclear, light, or darkness skills. Using these skills, you can exploit the weaknesses of other shadows to enact some serious damage, and ultimately either killing them or having them fall. At this point, you can go for another attack, or you can do a mechanic that is called a baton pass, which allows you to throw that extra attack that you just got over to a buddy to do the killing blow, or exploit another shadow's weakness. When all the shadows are down on the board, you'll surround them with all your guns out and you go into a negotiation mechanic where you can either mug them of their money and items, or try to reason with them and gain that shadow as a persona. This negotiation system is one that they brought back for Persona 5, which is in this place because of the way that they changed the shadows in this game. In previous Persona games, shadows were different from the personas that you collected, usually taking the shape of inanimate goop or a goddamn table, while the personas were acquired usually after battle and whose only appearance is in combat when you summon them for skills or fusion in the Velvet Room. In Persona 5, on the other hand, there are no spooky tables or weird pyramid women, as the shadows you face are the persona that you collect. So when you negotiate with a demon sitting on a toilet or a succubus, you get to have a conversation with them that makes them recognize your true self with some often hilarious dialogue. One of my favorite aspects of negotiation is that it reflects a ton of the themes that have to do with looking within yourself and realizing who you truly are and atoning for whatever sins or negative things that you've done. Now if you don't want to negotiate, you don't want to take it, and you don't want to mug it, now there is one last thing you can do, which is an all-out attack. All-out attacks have been a Persona staple for a while now. Basically, when you have all your enemies down, you can pile in and wipe out the entire group in one fell swoop. Overall, not much has changed, and in one case, Persona 5 actually removed a minor mechanic from the all-out attacks. This minor mechanic, which was added in Persona 4 Golden, would sometimes trigger when an all-out attack didn't finish all the enemies off. What would happen is, if you had specific people in your squad, such as Chie and Yukiko, or Kanji and Naoto, they would perform a special attack that would usually finish off the remaining shadows. Unfortunately, with Persona 5, this thing has been removed, but in its place we got the tightest damn style out of any game. While mechanically nothing really changes, every time an all-out attack is performed, it's a huge flurry of style as shadows bounce around the screen in silhouette, and the Phantom Thieves strike at their foes, and when the foes are finally done for, the sequence finishes with a stylish end screen. Oh man, let's watch that again.
Okay guys, let's do it!
Oh man, now I'm not lying when I say that seeing an all-out attack never gets old. Seeing them jump and zoom around in the screen is always satisfying to watch. And you better get used to seeing all-out attacks, because even when you've collected the treasure and the palace collapses, you still have opportunities to play through some combat. How this occurs is through a location underneath the Shibuya subway network called Mementos. Mementos can essentially be described as everyone's palace or society's cognition. Since everyone has secrets and parts of themselves that they don't want to come to terms with, you can find shadows and those people's shadows in Mementos. Now Mementos takes the role of the randomly generated maps of the worlds in the TV world from Persona 4 and Tartarus from Persona 3, and if anything it really kind of models itself off more from Tartarus. With Mementos, you start at the top and make your way down to the depths, passing a seemingly endless amount of floors with shadows, treasure, and assorted other bunch of drama. This is similar to Tartarus, that was a tower where you started from the bottom and continued your way to a seemingly endless amount of floors to the top, where there is something to find there. So in essence, Mementos is the area that you grind outside of dungeons and fulfill a variety of story objectives that you'll find throughout the game. Now while I do like that there's an area to go and grind while you're not doing a palace, I didn't really find myself using Mementos for grinding. I used it more for fulfilling sort of defeating shadows for the fan site or any other requests. But all in all, this is just one of the aspects of the combat of Persona 5 that work hand in hand with the life simulation portion of the game. I'll get to how the two works in conjunction soon, but to wrap up the combat portion of Persona 5, I can say that it is fun, incredibly stylish, and honestly downright addicting. I found myself numerous times running through the palace trying to reach the end, and at some point I noticed that several hours had just passed and that I really should get to bed. You go through every night, eyes glazed over, just listening to countless battles, countless all-out attacks, countless zoom, zam, boom, and listening to Last Surprise countless times, but it never ever gets old. It's honestly addicting. And that's just the combat portion of the game. We haven't even talked about the life simulation part. In case you never played any of the Persona games, if you aren't fighting shadows, you're doing a variety of activities that range from hanging out with your friends, working to get cash, watching films on DVD or at the theater, playing that damn Super Famicom, or eating burgers to increase your guts' social stat. The vast majority of the story will take place during these interactions, and depending on what you do will make up about half of the game or more if you're more interested in the confidants, like myself. Now the life simulation portion is something that is special to Persona and has been known for it for quite a while. Basically, you go day for day across an entire year. Sometimes some events speed up that progression or slow it down. Within a normal day in Persona 5, you wake up, go to school, potentially answer some common knowledge questions, and do whatever you want after class. When you got free time, you can choose anything from working to hanging out with your buds, to increasing your social stats, and you'll tend to notice that all of these systems work and complement with each other. Starting with the social stats, which make up the different attributes of your character that include knowledge, charm, proficiency, kindness, and guts, will be helpful in your journey throughout the game. At certain points, you will need to increase one stat to be able to talk to one character or progress a story element forward along. You can increase these stats by doing a variety of tasks that range from working at a specific job, to studying to increase your knowledge, or hanging around a restaurant or a bathhouse. A lot of the time when you increase one attribute significantly, it will also help another attribute. One example is that when you complete the burger challenges at Big Bang Burger, you don't just increase your guts level, but also knowledge, proficiency, and charm. But the one aspect of the life simulation that you'll want to get a hold of the most is the confidant ranks, or social links as they were known in the previous games. In these sections, you spend time with specific people, whether it is your teammates at your side, random people on the street that you meet, or even some antagonists that you'll see recurring throughout the game. These story arcs go through 10 different events that allow you to know the characters better and ultimately show them grow into even better people, which can be wholly satisfying. But on the practical end, going through the story beats of your confidants don't just net you a nice story bonus, but actually net you a practical bonus in the combat section. Increasing the confidant ranks of your teammates allow them to do exceptional things during combat that reflect the friendship between the player and the other characters. At first they'll be there to do some fighting with you, but as you get to know them and they get to learn to trust you as a friend, abilities start to appear such as baton passes, special finishers, and saves. But a lot of the time, some of the bonus created from doing a confidant might not go to just you. It might even help another teammate out, such as a recovery bonus that makes one of your allies literally slap some sense into their ass. And as you progress more and more into the Confidant, you'll see that it will get to the point where your allies will take a bullet for you in combat, halting what would have been an otherwise deadly hit for you. But the reason you'll come back to see these Confidant ranks over and over again is not because you really want them to help you in combat, but most of the time because you actually want to see where the story progresses. You'll want to see how these characters grow and react and do things. Now, it's not a lie when some say that Persona thrives on characterization, because it's practically more important than the combat, because without someone or a reason to fight, there's really no point to the combat at all. And I can say that Persona 5 provides us with another great cast of characters that is quirky, nuanced, endearing, and lovable in every measure. Not gonna lie, at first they kind of neatly fit into typical anime-ass archetypes, but as the story progresses and you get to know them, they open up to be complex characters, which makes for some moments that can be real tearjerkers as you help each other through conflict. Everyone in the group has something great to provide, whether it's Ryuji's boisterous attitude that saves the group as often as it puts them in trouble, or Makoto's stern, cunning leadership that gets through some tough-ass situations. And let's not forget my man, who not just makes a nice painting, but also the greatest 2-second rendition of the Passion of the Christ, Yusuke Kitagawa. All of these characters, and even the ones on the side, have meaningful and impactful sayings to say or do with the player, so when it comes to some concepts and themes in Persona 5, it'll be tight. Persona 5 throughout, it will have some complex subject matter that can be pretty dark and sometimes really damn uncomfortable, specifically when it focuses on its main themes, which are injustice and oppression, and especially when it shows that many of these people tend to suffer by themselves and not to bring it to light in fear of any sort of repercussions. But that's not to say that all of it is pretty negative. While Persona 5 might have some dire opinions of modern day society, it also still has some room to perform some jokes and provide a heartwarming experience. Apart from the good old interactions that you get between members in the group, like Yusuke and Futaba's rivalry, or Ryuji's generally being a dumbass, there are tons of smaller references and joke throughout. One of my favorites is going to the movie theaters or renting a movie that always have these dumb, stupid, overly dramatic or melodramatic dialogue that always puts a big dumb grin on my face. Man, you really gotta hand it to the localization team for not just translating the game, but doing a fantastic job at it. I honestly don't recall a moment where I felt like something was lost in translation or wasn't applicable without some 4Kids-esque censorship. On top of that, the voice cast is absolutely phenomenal, and they all do a fantastic job acting out their roles, and I feel convinced that these characters sound like they should. Persona, Lee, I like to listen to the English voice actors myself. Really kind of Persona has done some of the best voice acting for English when it comes from a JRPG, unless you're Fuka Yamagishi from Persona 3, so whoever you are, I'm sorry, it's kind of sucked. It ain't an exaggeration that Persona 5 has style above and beyond its predecessors, let alone other games within its genre. Before you even start the damn game, you'll get a superb opening animation that sets the motif throughout the whole game, and what you'll come to grow and love. You'll quickly learn that the 3 coolest colors are black, white, and red, while the coolest soundtrack is one filled with snazzy acid jazz. Now, Persona has always had a distinct sense of style, like in Persona 4, where you hang out with a crew that look like they popped out of his Shinjuku light-up billboard advertising for some new line of clothing. And hell, even in Persona 3, everyone is wearing prominent armbands and point that goddamn pistol to their head to summon the Personas. But Persona 5 finds a way to step above its predecessors by designing just about every part of the game around its distinct style. The menus are flashy and stylish, just cycling through them is such a visual treat for the eyes that it doesn't seem to leave your mind even when you put the game down. One huge visual overhaul that the game has gone through is just through the character models. Previously in Persona games, you had a spectacular anime-inspired sprites would be on the side when someone had some dialogue, but their in-game model looked kinda like this. Let's take Yukari from Persona 3 for example. See here, she has a wonderful looking portrait, but in-game the model is... yeah. Luckily for Persona, they changed the style and the model so it shares the in-game and anime aesthetic, so it doesn't have this weird and archaic juxtaposition that the other games had. And for the most part, it looks fantastic. They're still relatively low poly models, but they look good at the angle most of the game takes place in. While for cutscenes it gives us a higher quality model that shows a lot more detail, though I wish that Atlas was able to use these models for most of the game instead of the lower poly ones that we get, but I understand if hardware limitations get in the way. The sprite work for Persona 5 is also improved from its predecessor in the sense that it adds in a variety of different stylish cut-ins when people are angry, surprised, happy, or sad. One good one that I always enjoy are the cut-ins with An and Ryuji because they look so damn satisfying. It just warms my heart. And of course, since we're talking about presentation, what's next, kids? That's right, it's the soundtrack. To go through a similar spiel that I go with every video, I have an opinion that the soundtrack of a game can elevate it to greatness if it's not just good, but works hand in hand with the gameplay. Persona 5, like its predecessor, is no different. In Persona 5, we had a 110-track soundtrack that plays for just about every single little event, location, and situation. You hear different music for walking around, working, hanging out with your buds, fighting shadows, and strolling through a palace. Now, while the soundtracks go through a variety of genres, I could say that the most common motif surrounding them more of a jazzy one that is a pleasure for the ears. To start, you get a vocal track called Wake Up, Get Up There that plays in the intro that gets you pumped up when you start the game, setting the tone for what's to come. Another favorite are any of the battle or boss themes that I've heard countless times, but they never seem to get old, and they never seem to get out of my damn head. Particularly Last Surprise, since you'll hear it for just about every single normal battle throughout the game. When you start up a battle with an ambush and the big ambush in block letters comes on the screen and the jazzy tunes start playing, it just never ceases to get me hyped. Now there are a lot more mellow tracks that either make the mundaneness of life seem more chill or even interestingly eventful. One good track is called Beneath the Mask that plays at night that just is incredibly relaxing, and it makes you want to look out the window into the Tokyo skyline and just watch them flicker. But as much as I would love to go through every single track of the soundtrack, we would be here forever, so just take my word that the soundtrack for Persona 5 perfectly emotes what is going on screen for the whole playthrough. My only gripe is that my boy Lotus Juice wasn't in it to do some rapping, but since a good chunk of the soundtrack is basically acid jazz, I don't think it would have worked. That being said, the vocalist we get for Persona 5, Lin Inaizumi, does a fantastic job with the music, and honestly, we're lucky to have her. And personally, goddamn, I love the soundtrack so much, I'm tempted to get the 4 vinyl LP that's coming out soon. Jeez, that would be so sweet. And with that, we've sort of reached the end of this review. Now, are you happy, Mr. Samurai Cop?
No!
Ugh. Jeez, man, god damn it, you're really grilling me for this. Well, if you're gonna make me keep going, you gotta make me keep going. Persona 5 is without a doubt one of the best Japanese role-playing games, and in general, one of the best role-playing games to come out in quite a bit. There's something about the Persona games that transforms repetition and the mundaneness of everyday life into something not just pleasurable, but downright addicting. Persona 5 will most likely take you somewhere around 130 hours to complete, with my playthrough just being under 135 hours. And every single moment of that experience is pretty great. Apart from a few segments that are so short I honestly don't remember, and really I can say it's worth every damn penny. Throughout Persona 5, you'll get pumped up, you'll get shocked, and you'll inevitably cry, and you'll probably laugh too. It feels like a journey to go through unlike any other, and the other games that rivals it are its predecessors. And not just a great journey, but the second best damn game I played this year, right behind Nier Automata. But while Persona 5 might be considerably longer, it is still absolutely terrific and wholly worth your time. So, with that being said, I'm going to have to give Persona 5 an absolutely phenomenally fantastic, Persona magnificent, whatever the hell, 10 out of 10. While it doesn't transcend the whole medium like Nier did earlier this year, it is still a game that is a must-play, and I will be comparing it to future games in its genre going forward. So getting back to Persona 5, it's still an absolutely phenomenal experience, and you have to go out there and play it. I implore you, still wholly deserving of its 10 out of 10 status. So now that we're done, are we?
Later, in the void.
Well guys, guess this is it. This is Tom the Chosen One, as always, and I'll be getting a swastika prison tattoo for my Aryan Brotherhood prison rat buddies. I'll see you next time.